Crypto Crew? Sean's coming back at you, another cryptocurrency video. What are we doing? What are we looking at? We're getting straight into it. We're going to be taking a look at the Bitcoin price chart and see where the technical targets could be based off the past. We'll be looking into the future based off the past to see how high Bitcoin could be going after this next halving. Before we start any of that, make sure you go ahead and smash that like button if you like this content. And if you haven't done so, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. We really appreciate all of your support. So taking a look at the charts and getting straight into it as promised. The current price action, this is Bitcoin versus the US dollar on the weekly. So each one of these candles once again represents 1 week. So as we see here, Bitcoin came up after the 2020 halving and hit its head. Again, it started to have this downwards resistance level. And we hit our head, came back down, blasted through it, and then started this upwards resistance level that we never broke through. And as we came back down, we sort of tested this downwards resistance level quite a few times before bouncing up and retesting that upwards resistance level again, ultimately topping out around that $69,000 threshold. Then we came back down and retested this lateral resistance level, which was flipped to support, and then look what happened when we broke through it. We went from 34 and fell off a cliff down below 20,000. This was that capitulation event with the FTX debacle. And since then, we've been in this downwards channel. This channel has been started and formed really since the $64,000 peak back in April of 2021. So we're not out the woods yet. The next upwards resistance level we have to pay attention to is around that 22.5 level at the current time of this recording. So if we do get back up to this, are we going to break through? Is Bitcoin be off to the races? Time will tell. Is the bottom going to be in? No one knows. Like Bitcoin could come up, actually break out of this, flip this resistance to support, come back down before trading upwards and up into the halving before we see that takeoff. But before we look at the takeoff, let's look in the past and see exactly what Bitcoin's done. As you see here, zooming out on the charts, we've had 1 cycle peak, 2 cycle peaks, and 3 cycle peaks. And right now we'll see the 4th cycle peak after the next halving, most likely. But what did Bitcoin do if we look at the extension levels? So as you see, we really can't count this because this is before really there was any halvings or anything. This is sort of just speculative mania when Bitcoin first came on the scene back in 2009 and 10, and then Bitcoin then bottomed out. But if we look at from this bottom to the previous high, which is around that $31 level, you see what Bitcoin did. It came up and tested that 1.618 level. If we make this a little bit bigger, you guys can see, came up and tested this level, wicked above it, but then came back down and ran into some resistance at that 1.618 level. That 1.618 level was at the $170 threshold, came back down and retested this, but then retested the 1.272, but then bounced up and ultimately came to the 2.272 level. So that's what happened after this first bottom when this euphoric mania run up in 2011 happened. So let's look after the next halving when we bottom out. We bottomed out around August of 2015 around the $160 threshold. So if we come from this bottom and we pull this fib extension up to the previous high around a little over $1,200, you see what Bitcoin did once again. If we stretch this out so you can see, Bitcoin came up like clockwork and tested that 1.618, came back down, and then blasted through it to make higher price action. So it did the same thing it did in 2011 and 12, also in 2017. So then after that, what did Bitcoin do? We see that Bitcoin then bottomed out down around $3,100 threshold. Note these bottoms. Every time Bitcoin bottomed out, what's the difference? So let's just get a target. Let's just get a price note, and the price note be right here. That's the first bottom. Then we have the second bottom. Then we had the third bottom. You really can't count this once again because this is before any halving cycle happened. This was all just euphoria in this cycle. So we're not going to really look at this $2 level. So we'll really start looking at the pattern after that first halving when we bottomed out at the $160 threshold. Once again, we came back down to this level, and let's just use our fib extension level, pull it up to the previous high around that $20,000 peak, and look what Bitcoin did. Once again, like clockwork, came up to that 1.618 level. The 1.618 seems to be a magnet when Bitcoin takes off to the races. With that being said, is the bottom in? If we zoom into the current price action to get a closer look, now could the bottom be in? Could this be the bottom down here around that 15.5 level? Now we can start to look at the bottoms in question. Is this area going to be the next bottom target area? So if we look back in the charts to see if we can note some type of pattern, with these bottoms, we see that we have 160, 3,000, and then 15,000. So if there's any commonality between all these, what happens? It looks like every time a new bottom, with this potentially being a bottom, forms, a zero gets added to the bottom. So if we use that same principle in Bitcoin and we use the fib extension down to this 15.4 level and pull it up to the previous high, which is around the $69,000 peak, the 1.618 level is up to this $176,000 threshold. So if this is the target that Bitcoin is going to go to, which could be probable, which is a possibility based off the fib extensions, once again we'll denote this around 177,000. And if this is going to be the target Bitcoin goes to, what could that next bottom be? Well, how low were each one of these retracements from the previous high? We look at the price range from around 1,200 and we come back down to this level. This was an 87% retracement. And then we do the same thing. We're going to be looking from the 2017 peak around 20,000 and pull it back down to about 3,100. So we go from 87 to an 84% retracement. And from the $69,000 peak down to the low, which is around that 15.4 level, we're looking at a 77% decrease. So the trend's your friend till the end. Once again, we see 87, 84, 77. So if we go up this high, and what if we have a 60% retracement from this level, or a 65% retracement from this level? And Bitcoin goes back down to roughly maybe that previous all-time high area around that $60,000 threshold. Could that be what we see? Could that be the new bear market? After the 2028 halving, if this is somewhat in the range of where the bottom could be, retesting these ranges, it could go lower. It could go down to, say, 72%. We'll just keep it up towards the previous all-time high, say 65% retracement. But if that's the case, and this is around the peak, we can do our next extension and see where that 1.618 takes us to. And that 1.618 takes us up to roughly a $345,000 Bitcoin price. Note, this will be after the halving of 2028. So as you see, the price just continues to get more and more the longer you hold on to this asset. Long-term gains is the name of the game when it comes to Bitcoin. Now, this is just speculative, and there's a lot of guessing here based off of pattern structure. So we're not saying this is guaranteed to happen. This will be after the 2028 halving. Keep that in mind. If it does go up to this threshold, over a $350,000 Bitcoin target, that's not bad. That's not bad for holding something within the next decade. Based off the current price action around 20,000, hitting around the $350,000 threshold within the next decade, that's almost a 20x. About 17, 18x to be exact. So this is a long-term game, not a get-rich-quick scheme, but all in all, you see where the price is heading. The halving shocks the system, and Bitcoin then once again takes off. And with that, I'm Sean with the Bitcoin Bros. You guys like this content, go ahead and smash the like button. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, go ahead and show us some love. We appreciate the support. With that, that's all I have for you today, and I'm out.